All right, so let's go ahead and get started with creating our models for our application. And our model will represent a particular task. So I'm going to go to the lib folder and add a brand new folder, and we will go ahead and call it models. And now I can go ahead and add a particular model to it. So I'm just going to call it task.dark, simple. Okay. And a model will be a particular class. And we will have a couple of different properties in this task model. The first property we need is obviously the title of the task. So I'm just going to go ahead and put title of the task. We will go ahead and create the constructor where you have to provide the title of the task. And since I'm putting this inside the curly brackets, this is going to be a labeled or named argument, which means when you create a task object, you have to provide the title as a label and then the actual title as a string. The other property that we actually need is the task ID. Now, I'm calling it task ID. This is actually the document ID. So I'm just going to call it task ID. And if we go back to our Firebase, you can see that this is what I'm talking about. This is the document ID, and I'm calling it inside the task model. I'm calling it task ID. But if you want, you can call it document ID. I like to call things inside the model something related to that particular model. So that's why I'm calling it task ID. Now, using the task, we can actually create a factory function and create a task object from a snapshot. This means that you can pass in the document snapshot, and if you pass in the document snapshot, we should be able to create a task from it. Now, whenever you're using document snapshot, you can see that we automatically imported Cloud Firestore because the document snapshot is contained inside Cloud Firestore package. The first thing I'm going to do is get the actual map from the document snapshot. So snapshot.data, that is going to give me the map, which is a dictionary. And now I can use that dictionary to create a task object providing only the title. So let's go ahead and provide the title. So I'm going to go ahead and say title. Now, one other thing that you have to remember is that this is from the snapshot. This means that this is coming from the actual Firestore database. And if it's coming from the Firestore database, it will also have the task ID. So possibly we can provide the task ID also. Now we can't really pass it over here. So we need to find a way to pass a task ID to this particular constructor. What we have to do is we have to take advantage of the optional arguments for our constructor. So let me go ahead and show you how you can do that. We have the task ID. I'm going to go ahead and make this final so that it can be set only once. And we're going to remove these parentheses over here so that this is not like a labeled kind of like an argument or named argument. And the optional arguments then goes inside this block bracket. So task ID is now optional. Sometime we may have it, sometime we may not have it. If we are creating a task based on the user input from the screen, then obviously we don't have task ID. But if the task ID, if you're fetching it, if we're fetching all the tasks from the Firestore database, then we do have the task ID. So let me go ahead and return the task. And you can see that we don't have to provide now the named arguments. So over here, we have to provide the title. So title will be map of title. And the second argument is actually the task ID. So we can go ahead and say probably snapshot.id, and that is going to give us the task ID, all right, or which is the actual document ID. So this part, which is the map title, is going to go right here. And this part, which is the snapshot.id, is optional. You can provide it or you can ignore it. It's going to go right there. All right. Okay, so this is good. Now we can go ahead and see that how we can actually use it. Let's go back to the to-do list. And in the to-do list, you can see that we are creating the doc right there. Now we can use that to create a task, task.from, and we may have to import task. Let's see. There we go. Task.from snapshot, passing in the doc, which is a snapshot. All right. We don't really need the map over here. And we will not need all of this because we are going to create a particular function which is going to build and return us the list item. So I'm just going to go ahead and say build list item, which will be based on the task. So we're going to be passing in the task. Now let's go ahead and see that how we can build a list item. So I'm going to go ahead and create a function which is going to return us a widget, and this will be build list item. You're going to be passing in the task. So there we go, task. And based on the task, we are going to go ahead and return a list tile, or you can return any kind of a user interface that you want with the title property set to task.title. And that is what we're going to do. The good thing about this is now is that we have created a very small function called build list item, which is responsible for building the smaller portion of the list, which is only the list item. So it's always a good idea to create these small functions so that they're easy to maintain. And then if you want to change the look and feel of a list item, well, you have only one function to edit. Okay, so this looks good. And let's go ahead and try to add something. So I'm just going to go ahead and say clean dishes. I'm going to say add. So the beauty of this is that whenever you add an item, it obviously goes all the way to the Firestore database, but then we have the stream set up over here. So whenever that particular stream changes, meaning whenever the collection, the Firestore to-dos collection changes, this actually fires again and it builds the list again for us. So that's the cool part, is that whenever we are adding something to the Firestore database, it is automatically, stream is connected to it, so it's automatically fire all of this code and basically building the list again. So it's sync with the data that we have in our database. Now, one of the things that we would love to do is ability to delete these items. So how can we do that? So let's go ahead in the next lecture and talk about how we can delete items from our list as well as obviously from our Firestore database.